The Pyramids of Giza is probably the most well-known place in Egypt. You really get the feel of Egypt there because of the camel drivers and the divine thought that you're in someplace different. It's probably the first or second thing that pops in your mind next to mummies. The Pyramids of Giza is probably most famous for having the Sphinx, which date around 2500 BC. It's where the kingdom of the dead came from. The pyramids were here for about 4,511 years. They're still very safe. The Sphinx dated around 2500 BC. That's because they were made of granite and limestone. Granite was usually used for burial chambers in the pyramids. The people who built it used skids to pull the blocks into intricate shapes. Pyramids usually took 20 years or longer to build. We're lucky we still have these magnificent statues to look at. The artisans were the fourth social class, and even though they were standing artists, they were viewed only as skilled laborers. Some of their great works included Nefertari's tomb paintings, the Sphinx, Tutankhamun's death mask, and Nefertiti's bust. Their daily quality of life was relatively simple. One of the most impressive examples of tomb paintings are the ones in Nefertari's tomb. Discovered in 1904, the paintings are some of the best examples of Egyptian symbol art. Unfortunately, they are under the threat of eradication. Because of the locations, artisans used plaster to make sure they had a flat surface. This resulted in intact paintings, but also the cause of buckling. Another amazing result of the artistic work is the Sphinx. The Sphinx dates back to over 4,500 years ago and is 73.5 meters tall. It is made from high-quality limestone. The Sphinx has the head of a man and the body of the lion. The Sphinx nose and beard are missing. For unknown reasons, this resulted in people thinking this face was female. Tutankhamun's death mask is an outstanding artifact as well. Nefertiti's bust is made from limestone and is over 3,300 years old. The painted sculpture is modeled after Queen Nefertiti, the wife of Akhenaten. It was discovered on December 6, 1912 at Amarna. It is very intact. Over thousands of years, artisans made many great works that we can see today. These can be found in all over the world in museums.
Scribes were an important part of ancient Egypt. They lived a good life. They were well paid and highly respected by other social classes. They were usually the only people who knew how to write. They were hired by others to write for them because many couldn't write. They were also the official record keepers of Egypt. They had to keep track of all the important things. Much of their work was done in hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics were one of the earliest forms of writing. It was a very complicated script and was only used for formal documents. Easier forms of writing were used for everyday life. Hieroglyphics consisted of more than 700 characters. It was a form of picture writing. Every single character was a picture. The Rosetta Stone helped archaeologists read the hieroglyphics. The Rosetta Stone was a tablet with 3 languages inscribed in it. They were Ancient Greek, hieroglyphics, and an earlier form of Egyptian script. Scholars who knew Ancient Greek were able to decipher hieroglyphics. It was found by men working for French dictator Napoleon Bonaparte. It is in the British Museum. The ancient Egyptians usually wrote their hieroglyphics on paper called papyrus. The ancient Egyptians wrote on a paper called papyrus made from the reeds of the papyrus plant. The Rhind papyrus was a mathematical papyrus named after Alexander Henry Rye, who purchased papyrus in Luxor, Egypt. It was found near Ramesseum. It dates back to 1650 BC. Many religious writings were produced in ancient Egypt. There were 4 types of writings. They consisted of mythology, ritual and magical texts, hymns and prayers, and funerary texts. Mythology was meant to illustrate the gods and goddesses' action and role in nature. Ritual texts were instructions on how to perform a ritual. Magical texts described rituals, part of spells used for specific goals in everyday life. Hymns were meant to praise our god or goddess. Prayers addressed them in a more personal way, asking for blessings, help, or forgiveness. Lastly, funerary texts were designed to ensure that deceased souls reached the afterlife. Egypt had a very complex religion with many gods and goddesses, and they wrote many texts for them.
One of the main duties of the priest was to prepare people for the afterlife. That didn't just mean mummification. It also included things like canopic jars, weighing of the heart ceremony, and shabbatis. Priests were also considered quite important people in the social class system of ancient Egypt. The first thing in the mummification process is to fully dry out the body. To do this, ancient Egyptian priests would lay the body in salt for around 70 days. Next, the body would be wrapped in over 100 yards of linen cloth. After that, the body was decorated with amulets, good luck charms, and it was prayed for to the gods. Later on, they would paint the linen with extreme details, including facial features and sometimes painted with jewelry and makeup. That was known as the inner corpse. The outer corpse is made up of hard components, such as gold, lapis lazuli, jewels, and lots of other different things, all finely crafted and full of details. To an Egyptian, the afterlife was more important than their lives on earth. They believed that whatever you did on earth, they would pay for in the afterlife. That is where the weighing of the heart ceremony becomes important, because if Anubis weighed their heart, and it weighed more than a feather, you didn't get to go to the afterlife. Egyptians thought that if they did good on earth, they would get to go to the afterlife. The heart was placed on a scale, and it was compared to Maat, the goddess of law, order, and judgment. The feather that supposedly was the truth, and the judge, Thoth, the god of writing and wisdom, would record. The canopic jars are known as Dwamaphet, Hapi, Mseti, and Kebisinef. Dwamatef is the first of the 4 sons of Horus. He was the head of the jackal, and the bottom part of the container was decorated with gold and lapis lazuli. Hapi is the second of the 4 sons of Horus. He has the head of a Hamadorus baboon. It also holds the lungs that come from the mummy. Mseti was the only human-headed canopic jar. He is the third of the 4 sons of Horus. He watches over the liver of the body. Kebisinef is the guardian of the intestines. He was last but potentially the most important of the 4 sons of Horus. Kebisinef is the falcon-headed jar. Shabbatis are little clay figures that are sent into the afterlife along with the mummies to take care of them and be a servant to them. They come to life when the mummy moves on to the afterlife. The shabbatis are often decorated with some sort of ornaments to make it look nice. Shabbatis are a significant part of the mummy's afterlife. Without the shabbatis around, the mummies could not live a very luxurious life. The afterlife would have everything that was around in ancient Egypt, like a bakery, temple, and places to trade. Shabbatis would go to all of those places rather often and do the things that normally the peasants would do on a daily basis. Shabbatis were very important in ancient